In Mark chapter 11, Jesus is walking with his disciples from a little town called Bethany to Jerusalem, about 1.5 kilometers in distance away from Jerusalem. And along the journey, he had to go across the top of the Mount of Olives. So walking on the flat road, you get to Mount of Olives and it goes down into the valley and up the other side onto Mount Moriah, through Megiddo into Moriah. And on Mount Moriah is the temple of Herod. Jesus was going to the temple of Herod to preach the word of God with his disciples. And as he got to the Mount of Olives, he saw a fig tree that had leaves on. Now, that time of the year, they didn't have leaves because it wasn't the season for figs. But when those trees had leaves, they always had figs. And so here is a tree with leaves but no figs. And Jesus says to the tree in Mark 11:14, "Let no one eat fruit from you ever again." And his disciples heard it. Now, he spoke that to the tree because it was an unproductive tree. An unproductive tree. It should have had figs if it had leaves. And now his disciples heard what he said. His disciples heard what he said. Now, he spent the day in the temple preaching, and then that evening he went back to Bethany, probably staying at Lazarus' house, whom he raised from the dead on the 4th day, who had 2 sisters, Mary and Martha, and he was a friend of Lazarus. And so the next morning now, he sets back out on his journey, following the same route exactly, to the temple in Jerusalem. He gets to the top of the Mount of Olives, and he goes past that fig tree. And Peter sees the tree dried up from the roots. And this is what he says to the Lord in Mark 11:21. And Peter, remembering, said to Jesus, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree which you cursed has withered away." So in 24 hours, there was a remarkable change in that fig tree. And Peter says, "Lord, you cursed the tree. You cursed the tree because you said, 'No man eat fruit from you hereafter forever.'" Now, Jesus could have said, "Peter, I never cursed the tree. I just merely said, no one will eat fruit from you again." But he didn't say that. He kept quiet, which means that he acknowledged what Peter said is correct. He did, in fact, curse the tree. By saying, "No one's going to eat fruit from you again," he cursed the tree. You see, anytime we say anything negative to anyone or about ourselves, we are cursing ourselves, putting a spell, you might say, a negative curse to bind and hold and restrict the success of that person's life. Say that. Anytime I say anything negative, I'm restricting that person or financial matter from succeeding. Verse 22. So Jesus answered and said to the disciples, "Have faith in God." Have faith in God. The World Translation, the same verse says, "And Jesus answering said to them, have the faith of God." Have the faith of God. The margin of my Bible says, have the God kind of faith. Have the God kind of faith. So Jesus is saying to his disciples, what I did when I spoke to that tree is exercising the God kind of faith. And he says, now disciples, you must also have this God kind of faith. And I'm going to show you how to have it. And he goes on to explain how in the next verse. He says in verse 23, "For assuredly I'll say to you, disciples, whoever says to this mountain," say whoever means whoever, because that's what whoever means. Say this, whoever surely meaneth me. So Jesus said, whoever says this mountain, be removed and cast into the sea. He's standing on the Mount of Olives. Most probably, He's talking about the Mount of Olives. And he says, whoever says this Mount of Olives be cast into the sea and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that those things he says will be done, he will have whatever he says. So Jesus is saying whoever says will have whatever he says if he believes in his heart what he says. Say that. Jesus said, whoever says will have whatever he says if he believes in his heart what he says. Say this, I must believe in my words. Now, family, that's not applicable only to a moment in time when we're trying to release faith. Again, that's not applicable only to a moment in time when we are trying to release faith. We must believe in our words all the time. Let's not say things we don't mean. Let's think about what we say continually. Let's always think about what we say and listen to your heart when you speak. When you're having discussions at work about your work, listen to your heart. Be aware of what you're saying, making sure that it's accurate and constructive, that your heart agrees with what you're saying.
Thank you for watching Dr. Theo's YouTube channel. We will continue to offer encouraging and life-changing highlights from Dr. Theo's past, present, and future series and messages. Please take the time to like and share the videos. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.